Greetings everyone. Hope everyone is doing well. Welcome to the stream. So for anyone just tuning into the stream, or if you're watching the replay, welcome. Today's topics for the class is going to be on real estate leads, lease contracts, lease documents. So that's the main topic for the video for today. We're going to start off with talking about the contract to lease, and then talk about the actual lease contract in the state of Florida that you could fill out as a real estate licensee for clients. And we'll talk a little bit about real estate leads and see where we're at as far as time is concerned once we get to there. So yeah, without further ado, we'll get right into it, start talking about the contract to lease, and take it from there. If you have any questions, feel free to ask in the chat or in the comments. We'll go from there. So once again, we're talking about contracts in the state of Florida. That's the current state that these contracts will cover and discuss. So if you're tuning in, you're out in another state, these documents do not pertain to you. So this is the contracted lease. This is the first thing I'd recommend you use whenever you're representing a tenant and you're putting in offers for a rental property. But you could also use this if you're representing the landlord and you maybe have a tenant contact you directly. You could use this document to start things off, but it's more or less most of the time useful for if you're representing a tenant and putting in an initial offer on a property. So as you can see here, this is not a lease. A lease should be signed before occupancy, so you need to keep that in mind, that the contract to lease is not an actual lease. This is mainly a simple way of understanding it. Is basically you use the contract to lease for putting in an initial offer. And I recommend using the contract to lease for, I'll discuss why, but to simplify things, you use the contract to lease for if you're representing a tenant in most situations and you're putting in an initial offer to a landlord. Let's say you found a 2-bedroom condo for rent and you want to put in an initial offer for your client, which is the tenant that you're representing, the renter. You would use the contract to lease to put that initial offer in, just to get send over something in writing that the client is serious about renting the property. And then if your offer gets accepted, then you should sign a lease contract. So the one main important thing I recommend using the contract to lease first is in the sales contract, in the actual lease contract, whether you're doing it for a condo, a co-op, or a single-family home, duplex, most of the time there's nothing in those contracts that discusses your commission. So I recommend using this contract to lease to not only put in an initial offer, but throughout this contract you could also write your commission amount in here, because the way I always recommend doing things is you don't want to rely on what you see in the MLS as that guarantees your commission. Even though in most situations, if it's whatever's advertised in the MLS is usually what your commission amount's going to be, and you're most of the time not going to run in the situation where someone wants to change the commission without you being notified first, or someone doesn't want to pay your commission. But me personally, in my professional opinion, and the way I advise individuals and licensees, is you always want it in writing. I don't, even regardless of the rapport I have with individuals or how good of a relationship, when it comes to business, I always want things done in writing. It doesn't matter how much trust or good rapport I have with any individual. When it comes to business, I personally like to put things in writing, especially when it comes to the commission. So that's one of the main reasons why I recommend using the contract to lease, is to write your commission amount in here and have it laid out for everyone to sign, so that you have some type of documentation to defend yourself if it ever gets to that point. Most of the time it doesn't, and people, especially if it's listed in the MLS with another broker, you're not going to most of the time run into an issue where someone doesn't want to pay your commission or switches things up on you. But I have seen it in the past, and you don't want to take that risk. You want to have your commission amount in writing, so that you don't have to worry about someone not paying your commission, or you not having any documentation that states what your commission amount is supposed to be. So if you fill out this contract to lease, one, it's used to put in an initial offer. Two, it's going to guarantee your commission if you write it in here, and I'll show you how to do that. So those are the two main important things for filling out the contract to lease when you're starting off with an initial offer for a rental. So let's start off filling this out. Landlord, let's just put a placeholder name here. Let's say the landlord today is, let's just say it's our company is the landlord. It could be an individual or a company, an entity. Let's just say our company name is the landlord for this particular contract. Let's say the tenant, let's just put a name here. Let's just say Billy Bob is going to be the tenant. Simple enough, landlord and tenant's name there. If it's multiple people, you put all their names there. Then you put agree to execute a lease agreement no later than whatever date. So let's say today is the 14th of June and you want to execute a lease by the end of this month, so you could write the 30th here, but you can make it sooner or later, change it as you deem fit. Next part here is the landlord or the tenant will prepare the lease. This could go either way. This is completely at your sole discretion, and most of the time if you're representing the tenant, a lot of times usually the tenant and the tenant's agent will prepare the actual lease, but that's not always the case. Maybe the listing agent or the landlord wants to prepare the lease. Under those circumstances you'll click the landlord button, but it's completely up to it could go either way. Really, it just depends on the deal and whoever's going to prepare the lease. So let's just say the landlord's going to prepare the lease for this one. You could also just leave it blank, let the listing agent prepare the lease or the landlord prepare the lease, but it's up to you. Me personally, I always like to try to prepare the lease to make sure it's done right, but you don't always have to. The deposit, with the intention of entering into a lease with landlord, tenant has paid whatever the deposit amount is. Let's say let's keep it simple. Let's say the deposit's $1,000 for this particular rental. Keep it simple to whoever the deposit holder is. In most situations, I usually like to have the landlord hold the deposit, but that doesn't always have to be the case. The cooperating broker can hold the deposit in escrow. You could have an attorney hold the deposit in escrow. I've even seen title companies be used to hold the escrow money, just to hold an initial deposit, but let's just say the landlord is going to be holding the escrow deposit. So that's usually the way I recommend it to keep things simple. Just have the landlord hold the deposit. Property address, you just put the full property address here. Let's just use a placeholder. Something simple. Just make sure you write the full property address, the full numbers, or if it's a condo or a unit, make sure you write the unit number. Don't leave that out. The full address, city, state, full zip code. I've seen things missing when the address is written, so that's why I mentioned that. And then the property is unfurnished or furnished. If it's furnished, you click this. You can attach an inventory sheet, which you should if it is furnished. If not, let's just say for this particular example, it's unfurnished. Then, of course, the property will be only used for residential purposes and occupied by the tenant and the following persons. Then you just write, whoever's going to be living in the property with the tenant. You could write the children if the tenant has children under the age of 18 if you want to there. I don't think you really need to, but if the tenant has anyone else living with them there, you put their names there. Let's just say it's just the tenant, which we wrote as Billy Bob. So we'll just put non-applicable. You could leave it blank also. It's not too big of a deal, that particular paragraph. So the next thing here is you want to discuss about when the lease will begin on. Let's say the lease will begin on July 1st, and let's say you're going to do an annual lease. So then you would put June 30th, 2023. I've seen a lot of mistakes here where landlords and other realtors, they say the lease is going to begin on the 1st, and then they say the lease ends on the 1st. That's not how it's supposed to be done. If you're doing an annual lease, in the state of Florida, you shouldn't be doing any leases that exceeds 1 year. If it's going to go over a year, you have to sign a new lease contract after the first year expires or before it expires, just to have a new contract set in place. It's supposed to expire 1 day behind. So if it's beginning on July 1st, 2022, that means it's going to end at midnight, or 11:59 p.m. technically, on June 30th, 2023. Same thing as if it began on the 15th of July, that means it's going to end on the 14th of July, and so on and so forth. If it began on the 20th of July, it ends on the 19th of July of next year. Don't make that mistake where you put, July 1st and then July 1st, 2023. That's not the right way to do it. That's incorrect. So just keep that in mind. Money due before occupancy. Tenant will pay a sum of, you put the amount here in accordance with this paragraph. I think my software, when I start putting things in, it'll automatically fill that in there. So you start filling this out. So let's start doing things here. First month's rent. Let's say the landlord wants at least for first month's rent due. So the first month's rent, let's say the rent is, let's say it's $1,000 a month, just to keep things simple. $1,000 a month due on the day of move-in. The lease starts July 1st, so it's going to be due on July 1st. So $1,000 due on July 1st for first month's rent. So advance rent, you could put that there if they're going to be paying for multiple months in advance. Let's not fill that out. Let's just say we're going to do last month's rent. So you fill out this third one here, $1,000 for last month's rent due on July 1st. Date of move-in. Security deposit. You could say that the security deposit is equal to 1 month's rent. You could also, I advise doubling the security deposit sometimes. You could double it, triple it, quadruple it if you really want to. I always recommend for a security deposit at least double it. But that's at the landlord and his sole discretion. Let's say for this particular example, since I always like to do a double security deposit, I don't sometimes always ask for last month's rent, but I do like to ask for a double security deposit. So let's say it's $2,000 in security that we want also. You'll put that there. If there's an association, in Florida, especially in South Florida, I know a popular thing is there's a condo association or a homeowners association in the community, and sometimes they have their own separate deposit. So let's say the landlord wants, a security deposit, first month's rent to move in, last month's rent, as we have here. But then also the association within the community wants a deposit as well. For their own security, and let's just say it's $500. So the tenant's gonna have to pay $500 security deposit to the association as well. But the association doesn't require one. You don't need to fill that out. Pet deposit, you could put the pet deposit here. You could fill that out accordingly. Other, sometimes in the other I'll put here like non-refundable pet deposit. It's like $300. Sometimes I put that here in the other, or if there's anything other that you're going to put there, you can fill out in these other sections here. So let's just say there's a non-refundable pet deposit. Let's say the tenant, Billy Bob, has a pet, so we're going to charge a non-refundable $300 pet deposit fee. Paragraph 2, deposit will be credited as follows. So the deposit we set up here was $1,000. So you could say here deposit will be credited as follows. You could put it towards the first month's rent. You could put it towards the last month's rent. You could put it toward the security deposit. What I like to do, and remember in the beginning of the video I was talking about your real estate commissions, I like to put it in the other. So if deposit's up there for $1,000, I like to put $1,000 real estate commission. So you could put that here. You could also put that down in the it's actually, I think that's usually where I put it there. You could put it in the additional terms here, but most of the time I put it over here on the on one of the others. So this paragraph 2, or I put it in the other right here, and then I write the real estate commissions. So, and then you can also have the brokerage names down here and so forth. So if let's say the real estate commission is the first month's rent, you could write that up here. Then you could also, the $1,000 here, sorry, I'm jumping around a little bit here. Basically, the easiest way to put it as far as a real estate commission is I put it in the paragraph 2 here. Just write it in as other as real estate commission. And then you put your company name down at the bottom. So let's finish filling out this contract to lease, and then I'll explain how you could do the real estate commissions. You could also put it in the other here. That's another way of doing it. So let's say you're representing the tenant and your real estate commission is half of the first month's rent. Let's say the monthly rent's $1,000, so your real estate commission is $500. You don't have to put it down here. You could remove that, and you could put here that the tenant is going to be paying your real estate commission you can put here is Realty Inc. commission $500 due on the 1st. So you could put it there like that. I think you can fit. Sometimes you can't always fit it. There you go. Yeah, it is Realty Inc. real estate commission $500. So they could put that down there, and then you could just take the $1,000 here, and you could also write it down here. It could be credited to the first month's rent, or you could put the other brokerage down here. So you could put another let's say $500 to tenant's broker. So you could put something like that there. Really, how you put it is up to you. I'd recommend you could do an either or, but this is what I'd recommend to put your real estate commission, whether you're going to write it and here in the other section, and the tenant's going to come up with the extra money there. Most of the time, I usually write it down here in paragraph 2. So, but you could do either or. So usually I just leave this blank. Let's just remove all that, and then I'll write $500 to tenant's broker. And then you can write the other $500 to the first month's rent. So let's say we're representing the tenant's broker here. We're representing the tenant, so that means out of the security deposit, once the actual lease begins, $500 of that, which is your half of the first month's rent, goes to tenant's broker. And this is where you could write that. This is how you protect your real estate commission and have something in writing. So this is the best way that I'd recommend that you do it. And you could change this around and make it differently. You could have the tenant pay their funds, up here in this paragraph. But the best and easiest way to do it is usually have it come out of the deposit. So it's the easiest way to do it. But and you could have the deposit held by the broker, the cooperating broker, or the listing broker. It's up to you from there. But this is the easiest way that I feel to do it. So yeah. The next thing is the rent payments. Tenant will pay a total rent for the lease term of $1,000, let's say, a total rent of, let's say, $12,000, I guess, for the year. And will also pay total taxes on the rent when applicable. That's if it's like seasonal rentals. Usually it only deals with like if the lease is less than 6 months and a day, I believe it is. So yeah, if you're doing like short-term rentals, that's when that applies. But there's taxes. We're not going to go into that. Tenant will pay rent including taxes when applicable as follow. In full, most of the time you're not going to pay the entire rent up front, but I have seen that where the full rent is paid in full. The full $12,000 for the year. But let's just say, for this purpose of this video, it's monthly on the first day of the month in the amount of $1,000. So $1,000 a month. The rent is pets permitted, as described. Let's just say one dog. Let's just say Billy Bob has non-refundable pet deposit, $300 for his one dog. Smoking, most of the time it's prohibited, but if it's permitted, then you'll click that. Utilities, tenant will pay for all utility services during the lease term, connection charges and deposits for activating existing utility connections to the property, except for and then you put that here. Maybe it's in a condo association, maybe the water is included, so except for the water, because it's included with the association fee, so that's included in the rent. Maybe there's basic cable included with the association, so you'd put that here in this particular paragraph. But if it's not included, then you don't put it here. So if there's anything included in the rent, you'll basically put it here. Let's just say water and basic cable is included, and let's just say also trash removal. So yeah, the tenant will be responsible for paying all the other things, electric, internet if they want internet. Unless it's, sometimes it's provided by the community, but that's what you'd fill out in this paragraph. Maintenance, landlord will be responsible for maintenance and repair of the property except for blank, which tenant agrees to maintain and repair. If you're going to put something here, you put it here. Maybe there's I don't know, you could put anything here really, honestly. If the tenant's going to agree to maintenance the air conditioner, or maybe the refrigerator in the garage or something like that, you would just put that here. I'm not going to fill this out, I'm just going to put non-applicable here, but if there is something else that the tenant's going to agree to maintain and repair, you'd write it here in this paragraph. Association approval. Most of the time it's the tenant paying a non-refundable application fee of whatever it is, $75, $100, let's just say it's $100, and make application for association by let's just say, when did we say this? No later than June 30th. Today's the 14th. Then let's say by the 17th they got to apply to the association. So yeah, most of the time, sometimes I've seen the landlord pay for it, not often. 9 out of 10 times, usually the tenant's going to pay any non-refundable application fee to the association. If there's an association and it requires association approval, then you'd write this and fill this in here, when they need to apply by and how much is the application fee. Additional terms, fill out if it's you need to put something there. Service member status, is the prospective tenant a service member as defined for Florida statute? Basically, I believe this is asking if it's if the tenant is a military, within the military and so forth. But you'd have to look at that Florida statute and look into it. Let's say for the example of this particular document, it's no, but if it's a yes, you'd fill it out yes. And then the last thing, which is important, is you fill out your brokerage name. So prospective tenant's agent's name. Let's just say you put your name here pretty much. So let's say the agent is John Doe, and then you put the brokerage name here. Whatever the real estate company is. So let's put the company name there. It's not one of our companies. And then the landlord, let's just say just put the landlord's agent's name there, and Ms. Realty Inc. And this is where you want to fill in your company's name to make sure that it's been established, like this is your full company's name and you are the tenant's agent. Then the last part here is just email addresses, numbers, addresses if there is any, and then everyone needs a sign and date, and then make sure everyone initials every page. So this is only 3 pages, the contract, the lease, so initial. And yeah, so when you have your company name down here, and then you also write in the commission amounts here in paragraph 2, or in the top paragraph for paragraph 5. So you'd fill in one of these slots here. Here we wrote it to the $500, which is coming out of the deposit, the tenant's broker. So you could write that. You could also write commission. Real estate commission, something like that, usually what you want to put there. A lot of times I fill out this form in a separate, like AuthentiSign or DocuSign, so you could fill it out there, but this is where you'd want to fill out your commission. So you could put it there, or you could put it in the paragraph up above that the the money before a move-in. The tenant's going to pay this amount. So that's basically it from there. Also, the first month's rent. You could also, if the commissions are coming out of the first month's rent or the last month's rent, you could remove the first month's rent, because let's say the landlord is not going to receive the first month's rent because the real estate commissions is the first month's rent. You technically could also remove the first month's rent here, so that there's no first month's rent. And then you could also remove this paragraph right here, down here. Remove this. You can say this goes, the deposit goes to the security deposit, and then you could also write that and down the other here. Let's say NIS Agents LLC real estate commission, $500 due on the 1st of July with all the other payments. So you can put that there like that. There's many different ways you could organize this. I think the easiest way, because I know I've changed it several times throughout this tutorial, I think the easiest way to keep it simple is you could write it like this. So let's say you're representing the tenant. If you're representing the landlord, you have a listing contract, or you should have a listing contract, which states your commission there. So in that case, you don't have to really worry about the contract, the lease. You can just sign a lease contract, the ones that you're supposed to use. Let the tenant move in, and your listing contract guarantees your commission there, so you don't have to worry about it. But if you're working with the tenant and you're putting in an offer to the listing agent for a rental or to a landlord directly, I'd recommend doing this right here, where you write, you're representing the tenant, you write your company name here, and then you write the real estate commission, and then you write the amount here. And then let's say you're getting half of the first month's rent, so you get the $500, and then the other $500 could be due as the first month's rent, due on July 1st from there. But regardless of how you structure this, I'd recommend taking it out of either the deposit, and you could put it in down here in this paragraph, but I think it's easiest to just write it here in the other and just have the tenant owe you this specific amount here. But you could play around with this. Maybe the listing agent wants you to write it in a different way. However you write it, I'd recommend you basically put it in somewhere in here. But you could also just leave it blank, and I think down here in the additional terms you could write that something like landlord yeah, you could put something in here that the landlord will pay $500 as a real estate commission directly to your company upon the lease moving in. But normally I don't write it down here, the additional terms, because it's really it starts making things a little complicated here and such, and you're not really supposed to be writing those additional terms down there too much, or making things too long or too complicated. I think the easiest way to do it is just fill it out up here. This is usually where I fill it out, but depending on what the listing agent wants you to put together, you could change it. So I'd either put it in this particular paragraph up here, or you could put it down here and have the so if like the $1,000 is the real estate commissions as a deposit, and the let's say it's going to get split, half of it goes to the listing agent, half of it goes to the tenant's agent, then you could put it there and pretty much write how we wrote it down here before, where the $1,000 just put as real estate commissions. So that's another easy way to put it. And then you could also have the landlord could hold the deposit, or if it's going to be the commissions, you could have the brokerage hold the deposit. So you could leave it like that, or you could have an attorney hold the deposit, either or. Or you could have the landlord hold it. It doesn't really matter too much, but this is what I'd recommend that you do as far as filling out a contract, the lease. Remember, this particular contract is number one. It's for putting in an initial offer when you're working with the tenant, to basically, show that your tenant's serious about renting this particular property to the landlord or listing agent. And number two is to have your commission amount in writing in here. However you write it, whether you write it up here in this first paragraph under the other, or you write it down here in this particular paragraph as far as the deposit and where it'll be credited to. Either way works. Sometimes it's whatever the listing agent and the landlord's comfortable with. for the purposes of this video, you could put it in the other or down here. This looks good. It's probably easiest, honestly, if you do it like this and just make the deposit, just have your brokerage or the landlord or some type of title company, someone will hold the deposit, really. Preferably your brokerage will hold the deposit. But you could have it, the landlord or an attorney hold the deposit, and then the deposit will be credited toward real estate commissions. And then everything else that's due, you could write it here as far as what's due upon moving. The tenant will have to prepare the payments prior to move-in for all these fees that are listed here. And then the deposit is going to be your real estate commission that'll get paid to you once everything is, they occupy the premises and the lease begins and everything's good. So basically that's it, the contract to lease. Two major things to remember from this is, number one, it's used for an initial offer on a property. Remember, as it says up top here, this is not a lease. This is not, you don't fill this contract to lease out and then that's all you have as far as the tenant renting the property and they just begin renting. There's no more contracts to be signed. That's not the case. You need to fill out an actual lease contract. That's why it says it here. This is not a lease. Lease should be signed before occupancy. So remember two things. One, this is an initial offer that's mainly used for. Two, write your real estate commission in here so you have something in writing telling how much your commission is. So with that being said, let's see. I've been doing this for about 30 minutes now. Let's start talking about maybe some real estate leads, possibly. I think that would be a good thing to start discussing. So let's see here. Give me a moment. I'm just going to put on this screen real quick while I pull up something here as far as getting real estate leads to start discussing that topic. Just give me one moment here. All right, I think we're good here. So we're going to log into the MLS here. We're going to start talking about getting real estate leads, because that was one of the topics for today's class. So I have made tutorial videos, training videos. It's on the YouTube channel as far as getting real estate leads. What I suggest here is going to be, it's just my professional advice and what's worked as far as concerning myself and realtors that I've worked with, and it's also how I actually started my career as far as in real estate. When I first got into the business, a lot of brokers that I worked for, they didn't really point me in the right direction, and I kind of was doing things that weren't very profitable, or I was wasting a lot of money and wasting a lot of time. And a lot of times that can happen, is that you're not really given the proper guidance. No one's really going to tell you the secrets and how to make money. It's a very competitive field of business. But the things I like to discuss in the beginning as far as getting real estate leads is, how to basically start off with spending as little money as possible or no money at all. That's usually how I like to recommend things in the beginning, because most of the time when you're starting off in real estate, a lot of individuals, they get their license and they think of it as like a job, like you're going to go get a job, but it's not a typical job. You're an independent contractor and you're working on a commission, unless someone's paying you a salary for you to do some type of administrative work or something different. In that case, that's a completely different thing. You're basically, working more as an employee under those circumstances. So, excuse me. So most of the time when you first start off, it's not like a normal job, and in the beginning you're gonna it's basically building a business. When you start off in the real estate profession and you're gonna start getting your own clients, I'm sure there's maybe some brokers that put you on a commission split, and then they give you leads and so forth. A lot of times there's a lot of work that goes into working leads, and if you're depending on your commission split, it may not be worth the money in my opinion. But regardless of that, I'm not here to tell you what's worth it or what's not worth it. Maybe whatever works for you at the end of the day. You need to do what is best for you, what you feel is best, and what makes you happy, and where you think is taking you in the right direction. But as far as real estate leads, I can only advise you as far as what's worked for me, and in the beginning, how to spend as little money as possible, and basically, or no money at all, just to get started in the business. So the first thing that I usually like to recommend doing is when you're starting off in real estate is try to spend as little money as possible or none at all. Now, as far as getting your own leads, what I'm going to recommend to you is basically taking the initiative and doing things yourself, not relying on a broker, not relying on a company to get you leads. Of course, you need a company to do your business and so forth, but what I recommend here is basically for you to start building your own clientele and start growing your business, because it is a business at the end of the day. You're growing your clientele and the amount of people that you're working with and so forth. So in the beginning, one way to not spend really any money, it's not the best way as far as getting started. It does take a lot of time, but there's really no money involved. The best thing to do you could do is advertising, but not everyone has money to spend on advertising in the beginning. So the first thing that I recommend that you do, I'm just going to open up this page here for right now while I'm talking and discussing. So yeah, sorry about that. The first thing that I could recommend that you do is what I started and what worked for me is try to work with listings. Working with buyers it does work, but me personally, I'd like to start off working with trying to work with sellers. Now, this may be something that you're not interested in doing, or maybe you don't feel comfortable working with sellers. Maybe you haven't sold any home yet. You're just starting the business. But one way to get started is contacting for sale by owners. Of course, you have to respect the do not contact laws and policies. So you're not just soliciting people that are on the do not call list. Just because it's a for sale by owner doesn't mean you can contact them. So that's the right advice I'm supposed to give, as far as you have to respect the laws and so forth. There is a do not call list, and if people are on it, you're not supposed to be calling them to solicit them for business. But that's one way to start off. I'm not going to go too into detail as far as contacting for sale by owners, because not a lot of individuals who start off in real estate like doing that, but that is something that does work. You do have to call a lot of people. Now, a lot of people are going to say no. Some people are going to be mean and nasty and say mean things and so forth. It's definitely not it definitely could be hurtful to the morale when you're calling so many people and getting so many no's and so forth. But contacting FSBOs, however you do it, whether it's by call, really I recommend however you're going to do it in a way that doesn't cost any money, and try to get a listing from there. But usually there's a lot of no's you have to go through. I remember sometimes I'd have to go through hundreds just to get a one maybe, and then sometimes that one maybe wouldn't even work out. So that's one way to start off without spending any money. Another way, which is a popular thing that I see nowadays, is you could go into the MLS and you could now this is the Southeast Florida MLS. There's multiple MLSs throughout the state, but you could go into search for properties and look for what, say today is the 14th. Let's just say we're going to look at yesterday, the 13th. And let's say we're interested in listings all in the county of Palm Beach. So there's 100 listings that got listed on 6/13 in the county of Palm Beach. And let's say we're looking for listings that are between the $250,000 and up range. So we don't want to see anything less than that. Then you could go to the results. You could open up the map too, but you can start off with the results here. And what I've seen a lot of realtors do, I know there's a function in the MLS that says like okay to advertise, like a broker or the listing agent can authorize that if it's okay to advertise. I always recommend that you get something in writing, because they could change that later on and then there could be a dispute there. So I really just forget about that. I would just recommend that you could go through the listings one by one. So this is everything that was listed on the 13th. So you can start going through these listings, and I'm not going to go down with look through it, but you can start basically contacting these listings. And basically what you would do is you'd basically reach out to the listing agent and ask for their permission to advertise their listing, and or what I recommend doing is you could ask for their permission to do an open house for them. Now, this isn't spending any money in the beginning, it's just your time. I mean, I guess you have to spend, some of your gas money and go out there and your time, and I guess time is money, but you're not having to come usually out of pocket with your own money. But you could start reaching out to these agents and you could draft up a nice email to send out to them, and you could basically ask them, introduce yourself and ask them, can you hold an open house for them? An open house is, most of the time, the most success I've found from open houses is that most of the time you don't usually find buyers that are going to buy that specific property, but you do get people that you could build a rapport with and maybe take them somewhere else to purchase a property if they're not interested or they don't end up buying that property. So an open house is good to just start meeting people, getting your name out there, giving away business cards or something, and then having those individuals possibly work with you, and then you could take them somewhere else if they're not interested in that property. So, and it works out usually sometimes for the listing agent because another agent's going to do an open house for them, and they don't have to do it or really participate much with it. And there's a possibility that it gives extra exposure to the property, and maybe one of the open house individuals will end up purchasing the property. But this is another way to start off without spending any money. If you're new in the industry, is you could do an open house. So you could start emailing all these listing agents, the newest properties on the market every day. And I'm sure you're going to get a lot of no's. I'm sure you're going to get a lot of people who ignore you. But you may run into a real, if you send out maybe 50 of these emails, maybe you'll get 40 no's. Maybe you'll get 5 maybes, and maybe you'll get 2 yeses. Sure, let's do an open house. You want to do an open house for me? That sounds good to me. In that case, that's a success right there. You took some time, you didn't spend any money, you just sent some emails out, and you basically, now you could do an open house, and you'll do an open house for that particular agent. And I'd recommend doing it in a very professional way. Maybe contact your broker as far as or someone that you work with within your company to help you do that open house in a very professional and proper way. And hopefully, people will come view the property, and maybe you could build a rapport with them, give out some business cards, and then get some clients like that to work with you and take them to another property if they don't end up buying that property. Or if they do end up buying that property, you did an open house, and then maybe you could sell that listing. So that's another good way to get started. That's a free way you don't have to spend any money. So you can just look for the newest properties on the MLS, as I just showed you there, and send out emails and see what the listing agents say. Some people may say, don't ever contact me again. You could put them on some type of list of yours that, not to contact this person. They don't want to be bothered, so you don't keep soliciting them or bothering them. Some people put up new listings all the time, and if somebody's not interested, if they're putting up a listing every week, you don't want to be reaching out to them every week, annoying them if they're not interested. So you might want to make a little list of individuals to not contact if they don't want to be contacted about that anymore. So that's one good way to do it. And that's worked. I've had a lot of realtors had a lot of success. It does take some time, and you do have to do maybe a few open houses, but I've had some realtors that had some success with it and closed a couple of deals. And you're not spending any money on advertising, like on spending a lot of money, like paying for leads or anything like that. And it's a good way to get started. And you might get a lead, and someone ends up buying, a house here or there. If you're with our brokerage, you're earning 100% of your commission. So let's say you go sell a house and get $5,000-$8,000 commission. You're working with that client for 2-3 months. You did that open house. It didn't really cost you any money except for a little bit of your time and maybe your gas money. I know gas is at the time of making this stream very expensive. But anyways, this is another topic. So, but the point I'm trying to make here is that you could use that money and take like a $5,000, $8,000 commission, even if it's a $3,000 commission. And reinvest that money into, or you could just, if you need the money to pay for bills and such, by all means. But I'd recommend try to save some of it and try to reinvest some of it into some advertising. And I've had a lot of realtors that I work with get started like that. They'll, if you're with our brokers, they earn 100% of their commission. And they take that commission amount, maybe they close 1 or 2 deals. Now they got maybe $6,000 from those commissions. And then they'll maybe invest like $1,000 into some advertising on top of still trying to do some more open houses and earn more commissions. So as far as advertising goes, I probably will save that for another stream, or if you're with our brokerage, you could contact me and I'll have a private discussion with you about what to do as far as advertising. But that's probably the next best thing to do, is once you start getting a little bit of money together, is to invest into your business, invest into yourself. And that would be as far as you have to find what works for you. Because what works for one person may not work for the next. And, you may be a premier Zillow agent and you pay for leads from Zillow, and that works out for you and you're able to close those leads, and it's great. If that works for you, nobody can tell you otherwise. That's great. There may be another agent that just the Zillow leads, they just don't work out for them. In that case, maybe that's not good for that particular agent, but it's good for you because you could work those Zillow leads and you get the job done with them. So if that works for you, invest into maybe some Zillow leads. Maybe Realtor.com leads. Invest in social, your own advertising. That's what I recommend. Get like your own website with the IDX feed from the MLS. Start advertising on like social media, sending out lists, and try to get people from Facebook, LinkedIn, maybe Twitter, Instagram, even putting up YouTube ads and so forth. Make a YouTube channel, things like that. Start branding yourself and growing your business. Get a website. Maybe pay for traffic towards your website using pay-per-click ads and so forth. And try to invest a little bit. In the beginning, I don't suggest investing a lot, especially if you're just starting out. Even if you have a good amount of money to invest, let's say maybe you got $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 to start off to invest, or maybe you only have $1,000 to invest. I'd recommend in the beginning, try spending a few hundred, like $400 or $500, and do things a little bit at a time and seeing how the results are. Because that's the last thing you want to do, is spend a large amount of money and get no results from it. You want to invest a little bit at a time and see what works. Because if one thing doesn't work, like let's say maybe the Realtor.com ads are just horrible or not working out for you, you don't want to spend too much. Maybe spend like $200, maybe it's not working out too well, end it there. Even though I know the Realtor.com, they make you sign contracts, so you got to be careful there. But the point I'm trying to make is, maybe you pay for some Facebook ads, maybe they're not working out too well. Then you try the Zillow ads and leads and so forth, and maybe that's working out great. You put maybe $400, $500 into that, and you ended up getting a deal out of it and turned that $400 investment into maybe a $2,000, $3,000 commission, and that's good. Maybe you turned it into an $8,000 commission. Then start investing a little bit more into that lane because that's working for you. Maybe you did some Instagram ads or something, or Twitter ads, and maybe a $200, $300, $500 investment got you some leads and maybe turned into a sale and so forth. Just do a little bit at a time and try different things. But that's when you're paying for advertising. In the beginning, I recommend trying doing things for free and taking it from there. But that's as far as real estate leads and the discussion for that and how that would go. Maybe I'll talk more about that in maybe our next class. But I want to touch on that a little bit because I do get a lot of questions of, how can I start building up my real estate leads? How can I, get started in the industry without spending a lot of money? And those are some of the things I recommend that do work. Really, at the end of the day, in my professional advice, the way I like to do things is I don't really like to rely on another brokerage to give me leads or give me anything and so forth, because usually there's a commission split involved and it's usually not worth it at the end of the day. But that's just my opinion. It may work for you. Even if you are doing that, I still recommend try to do some things on your own and get your own leads and keep the majority of your commission, such as, like I said, about the open house, doing open houses or re-advertising other individuals. But you need their permission to do these things. Or contacting for sale by owners, trying to get a listing, and eventually trying to invest a little bit into some advertising. And if you're with our brokerage, you can reach out to me and I'll talk to you more about how to advertise on social media, the internet, and so forth. Getting your own website, the IDX set up so that you could start investing a little bit into your advertising, so you can start getting your own traffic of leads and not have to rely on other sources or your company. So you can keep the majority of your money, because but it depends what works for you. At the end of the day, you got to do what works for you. So that's a little bit about that as far as leads go. Yeah, I think I'm gonna stop the stream from there. I'm talking for about 50 minutes now. I hope a little bit of the things that I discussed was helpful and useful. We talked about the contract to lease today and about using it as an initial offer and securing your real estate commission. I think next class I'll start talking about the actual lease contract, which is, we can pull it up right here. We'll go through that as a tutorial for the next class. So let's write it here. Lease. Let's look for it real quick. So yeah, these are the two in the state of Florida. These are the two leases that you could fill out. You can't fill out any other lease contracts. If you're a private landlord and they're doing their own thing, that you can't draft it, but they could draft their own thing. But as far as a real estate licensee, as a realtor, real estate agent, real estate broker, these are the only two leases that you could draft in the state of Florida as far as you filling in the blanks for somebody and filling out a lease contract. There's one for the single family home and duplex, and then there's one for apartments, condos, basically units. So we'll go over that one and maybe a single family home for the next class. And this is a few pages. The first is the non-lawyer disclosure, and then this is the actual lease contract. When you're going to enter into a lease, this is what you need to have the tenant and the landlord sign. And this particular one is for a unit, pretty much like a condo, co-op, apartment. You'd use this lease contract. So as a real estate licensee, this is the only lease contract you could use as far as for apartments, multi-unit, including mobile home, condominium, co-op. This is the only contract you could use as far as drafting something for your clients. And we'll go through this particular contract. It's not too complicated. Make it simple from there. So maybe we'll discuss that for next class, which will be on Thursday, and we'll go from there. Hopefully, the contract lease I discussed to you today, you'll take note of it as far as securing your commission, because with leases, there's nothing really in the contract that discusses your commission when you're working with a tenant. If you're working with the landlord, you have a listing contract, so you don't have to worry about that. But working for the tenant as a tenant's agent, you want to have your commission written in somewhere. And hopefully some of the advice I gave you as far as concerning starting off in real estate, getting real estate leads, hopefully it's helpful, because it's not easy in the beginning. No one's really going to give you the right direction, and the things you got to do to get started. You're growing a business. It's not going to be easy. Nothing as far as growing a business or in the real estate industry is easy. There's a lot of work with things. But some of those things that I mentioned, they do work. It does take some time, and there are a lot of no's you're going to get, and people, if you're emailing people asking for permission to do an open house and so forth, don't get discouraged when people tell you no or say something mean to you or something like that. You have to be tough and continue moving forward and keep pushing, because when you get that one yes, that's what matters, and that's what's going to make you feel better when you can actually do something, especially if you could do an open house and get a sale from it, work with a client and get things started. And basically that's the hardest thing, is getting started. But once you start doing things and get started, then it's you're pretty much good from there, and you're going to start moving along, and then you can invest into some advertising and continue to grow your business. Other than that, more information about our companies in the description below. I'd appreciate if you could subscribe to our channel. It doesn't cost you any money to hit the subscription button. That be also notified when we do our classes or any other videos I upload. Other than that, we pay our agents 100% of their real estate commission. More information is on our website, nizrealty.com. It was a pleasure as always. Thank you, and we'll see you in the next class.